This down a little bit further with retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery. Thank you so much for being with us here on NewsNation Now.
Thank you for having me.
In your opinion, is there anything that Hezbollah or Iran would do in terms of changing their mind with engaging Israel the way that we've seen over the past several hours and days?
Well, I think this was an important strike by Israel in the sense that, they saw an imminent threat. This is not the Israeli big strike into Lebanon. I think that's a weeks or months long campaign. This was a very much an imminent strike to preemptively take care, minimize the impact of a Hezbollah attack in Israel. And Hezbollah was going to attack. There, a senior leader, Fouad Shakur, was killed, several weeks ago now by the Israelis, and the Israelis have acknowledged that they did it. There was going to be a counterstrike. I think what Israel did was mute that counterstrike. And look, part of deterrence is that you impose cost on an enemy, that you go forward and strike their systems. It makes your defense more effective to have less incoming missiles. There still were a number of incoming missiles and drones into Israel, but this is kind of what you'd expect from Israel, and it was almost overdue from Hezbollah.
Overdue and continuing as a result of vengeance. They say that they're firing on Israel until there's a ceasefire reached in Gaza, and no longer will we see those Palestinian deaths that obviously have been on screens all around the world. But in terms of what Israel is doing, Benjamin Netanyahu vowing that this is just the start, that they will continue these kinds of preemptive surprise attacks in order to cripple Hezbollah in Lebanon. How successful do you think they'll be?
Well, I actually think this is part of a long-term campaign. This is a good plan by Israel. In other words, what Israel's been doing for the last 9 months is striking into Lebanon, killing colonels and lieutenant colonels in Hezbollah, every once in a while a more senior official like Fouad Shakur. But the goal there is to minimize the effectiveness of Hezbollah as a warfighting organization. It truly is an army, much more so than, say, Hamas in Gaza. Additionally, they're striking the long-range and medium-range rocket and missile firing systems, so they can thin the herd, so to speak, for an incoming, for Hezbollah counterstrikes when Israel decides to do something serious against Hezbollah in Lebanon. So this is part of a long-term strategy. I think it's smart, and I think the longer Israel can hold off their big attack and get themselves restocked, get themselves reset from the combat they've had in Gaza, the more successful and less number of casualties, both for Israelis and Lebanese, will occur in what is an inevitable conflict, I think, between Hezbollah and Israel in the coming year.
And Mark, obviously there are some who would say, it's inevitable that Israel would strike against this militant group that has fired unceasingly, causing wildfires, the displacement of civilians in the northern part of Israel, and caused harm, the deaths of young children on a soccer field most recently and most markedly. But there are those who think that, Israel is being funded by taxpayer dollars. The U.S. just gave another $20 billion in aid to Israel. There are those who say until there is a ceasefire that America should just stop funding Israel. But what is your take from a military standpoint, from a war strategy standpoint? What other options does Israel have?
Well, Israel does truly have one persistent quality ally, and that's the United States. So they do need the United States. And the United States, Israel's under a multi-threat front, from Iran, Lebanon, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas, the West Bank. They truly are opposing this kind of axis of authoritarianism, just like we do with China, just like Ukraine does with Russia. These groups are all, coalescing together. So they're helping carry forward our fight for us. We give them a very small amount of money. The truth is our U.S. military assistance on average for the last 8 years is $3.9 billion a year. That is pocket lint within the Department of Defense's budget. So a very small amount. enables us to have someone to help control the threat from these countries, from Iran, from the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Command, their surrogate forces. So I don't believe that we're giving an excessive amount to Israel, but more importantly, we get a lot back from it. And so, to me, this is a minor investment by the United States that helps us control our response with Iran.
I have one more question for you that maybe you weren't prepared for, but I'm hoping if you have an answer, you can give some insights. I know that the Trump campaign has vowed to have some sort of Iron Dome over the United States using the same type of technology that Israel uses. Do you know anything about that and how that would be possible?
So I want to separate those two things. There's an idea of having a comprehensive missile defense of the United States that is like Iron Dome is for rockets and mortars in Israel. But Iron Dome handles rockets and mortars that are fired from, 50 to 100 kilometers away at most. So an Iron Dome would help us against Cuba. That's about it. The reality is, I think to be fair to President Trump and his administration, in his potential administration, what they're talking about is creating a more comprehensive defense system against the hypersonic weapons that come from China, the hypersonic weapons that come from Russia, and potentially, intercontinental ballistic missiles from North Korea. That kind of defense of our homeland is absolutely necessary. And the last three administrations, including President Trump and his last administration, did not do enough to deal with this issue. So the concept of a comprehensive missile defense of the homeland of the United States is absolutely something that should be discussed and decided. The technology won't be the same as Iron Dome. The strategic concept might be similar, that you want to be able to defensively shoot down as many of these weapons as you can.
Thank you. And I'm so grateful that you had the insights and the expertise to be able to address that, because it's something that I think we have to remember, that what happens with Israel does affect the United States. It's not happening in a vacuum. And that, again, those conversations that happen on the political arena can sometimes be tied to factual and historical events happening throughout the world. Mark Montgomery, an honor to have you, sir. Hope you're back soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian.
At Columbia